During 2025, I had to, well, I wouldn't say I had to, I got to go to New York because my dad's job description changed pretty dramatically. So we had to go a lot of times, and most recently, we went over the Christmas holidays. And while I was there, I visited 4 bookshops and I got 4 books. So, I got one piece of fiction. Well, I got one fiction book, one book that includes both non-fiction and fiction, one non-fiction anthology, and one comic. So, let's start with the comic. This is DC, The New Frontier by Darwyn, Cooke, and Dave Stewart. Darwyn Cooke actually was the writer and the artist in this book, and I watched a video essay by Matt with 4 T's. They're kind of more like documentaries that over an hour long. They're super high quality. If you're interested in comics, I very much recommend it. And that made me very, very interested in this book. And as you can see, every single page is kind of in this 3-panel format, which is apparently strange for Darwyn Cooke. But this is kind of a huge comic, especially for this new DC Compact Comics line, which is basically DC trying to compete with manga. These books are a lot smaller than the regular comic graphic novel sizes, and they're designed to compete with manga because this is the exact same size as a manga book. I think they're called tonkobans or something. And they've been doing really well. They've been selling very well. But I assume comics is not what most of you are here for. So I will move on. Let's go to the fiction. This is White Noise by Don Delillo. I am almost finished with this already. I've got like 60 pages left, something like that. And this has been amazing. It's the first Don Delillo book I've ever read. And just the way, because the book is largely plotless, apart from like a 50-page section in the middle, where there's this airborne toxic event. But everything around that there's basically nothing going on, and it's just this guy, Jack Gladney. It's in first person, and it's him and his family going around on their day-to-day life through this. They live in this college town in middle America. I assume it's like somewhere in the Midwest. I don't know if it says in the book. And he's a professor of this fictional, I don't know what it's called, fictional field of study called Hitler Studies. And basically the book is called White Noise. And this white noise is supposed to be about the media and how everything, our whole lives is kind of controlled by everything that we see coming from, well, nowadays from our phones, from our laptops, but back then from the TV, from newspapers. Babette, Jack Gladney's wife in this book, is constantly reading out tabloid stories that are just not true, but she's reading them out for fun. She's also addicted to talk radio in this, and Don DeLillo will just insert random things like, oh, the TV said X, Y, and Z. And it's very interesting, and the way the dialogue is really weird, but the characters are also really weird. But I think the weirdness makes it cool, and the weirdness makes it quite awesome, honestly. I think I'm going to do, once I finish this, which should be today, maybe tomorrow, I will do a full review of this, so subscribe if you want to see that. But I'm enjoying this book a lot. Next up, Writing Politics, an anthology. I think this was the only one I got at Strand Books, which is the big used bookstore. I think they claim that it's got like 18 miles of books or something in there. For some reason, I don't think this is used, which was stupid, but it was still like only $5, something like that. So pretty good deal for this new NYRB classic, and it is Writing Politics, an anthology by Mr. David Bromwich. So what this is it's a collection of a lot of political essays written by lots of leading political thinkers, I guess. Like you've got Ralph Waldo Emerson, Thoreau, There's George Orwell, Hannah Arendt, MLK, Virginia Woolf, Winston Churchill, Gandhi, W.B. Du Bois, William James, George Eliot, Abraham Lincoln. There's just a ton of stuff in here. I've read a bit of the introduction, and it sounds very interesting. And the guy who compiled this collection of essays is David Bromwich, and he is the Sterling Professor of English at Yale. And apparently the Sterling Professor is like the big banner professor, like the big guy professor. Basically, he's the top English professor at Yale. But because he's an English professor, I'm going to assume this book is kind of, all these essays are mainly chosen for their like prose, their how cool they are from an English standpoint as opposed to a political standpoint. But we'll see. So I'm excited in reading this, and I can just read this kind of randomly. I don't have to read this from front to back, so it's pretty exciting. Okay, lastly is the one I'm most excited about. That is Joan Didion, the 1960s and 70s. This is my first ever Library of America book, which is very exciting. If you don't know, Library of America is it's a non-profit publisher, and they publish some of the best American authors of all time in these very fancy volumes. And Joan Didion has, I want to say 3 or 4, and then there's a volume of her letters and stuff as well. But this has Run River, which is her first novel. Then it has Slouching Towards Bethlehem, which is the one I'm planning on reading next. I plan on reading it either after finishing White Noise or after reading Mother Night by Kurt Vonnegut. And then there's Play It As It Lays, which is one of her most famous novels. A Book of Crime and Prayer, another novel, and The White Album, which is another book of essays. Joan Didion for me is an author I really want to read, because she's part of kind of the new journalism in the 60s and the 70s. So that's people like Tom Wolfe, Norman Mailer, Gay Talese, that kind of thing, Hunter S. Thompson. And to be honest, I've talked a lot about it, and I feel like I should have read them all. I've read barely any of it. I've read essays by Gay Talese, and that's pretty much it. I have The Right Stuff by Tom Wolfe, which I really want to read, but for some reason I haven't. But Joan Didion is very much a part of this, and she captures some crazy stuff that happens in California in the 1960s in, I think, Slouching Towards Bethlehem, and I think The White Album as well, which, again, I feel like is something that I've been interested in for a while, but then again, I haven't really read anything. Like, I've watched Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but that doesn't really count. I guess that one of the things that interests me about that era as well is like the moon landing and that kind of thing, which is what The Right Stuff by Tom Wolfe is about, and A Fire on the Moon by Norman Mailer. But this is a book that I'm very excited to get to. I've heard people say that Joan Didion has some of the craziest, the best prose, and I'm so excited to have it in this Library of America edition as well. And it looks so good without the dust jacket on as well. It looks like I'm in some old-timey library. I'm thinking of having it without the dust jacket. You've got the Library of America logo and Didion, the 60s and 70s. And the way it feels like a Bible. It's got that kind of paper. It's just, I don't even know what I'm saying. But I'm very excited about this one. And it is, the Library of America books are they're pretty expensive. But because you're getting, in this one at least, you're getting five books in one. I think that's a pretty good deal. It was like, what did it say? It was $40. Okay, maybe that's not a good deal. For 5 books, that's more than you're going to get if you buy each one new. So that's fair enough. Well, do I really want to read Run River, her first novel? Not necessarily. I'm not super excited or intrigued by it, but that would be cool to read. So, I got DC The New Frontier comic book, which is, I don't actually say what it's about, but it's basically Darwyn Cooke just kind of reinventing the DC universe of superheroes. We got David Bromwich, Writing Politics, an anthology, a new book put out by NYRB Classics. We got Joan, Didion, the 1960s and 70s, including Ron Rivers, Hatch Towards Bethlehem, Play As It Lays, and A Book of Common Prayer and the White Album. And then, soon to be finished, is Don DeLillo's White Noise, which is at the moment going amazingly well. And I am very excited to read some of Don DeLillo's next books. If you have any recommendations for what Don DeLillo book I should read next, I'm open to it. I really want to read what's called Libra, which is about the JFK assassination. I am very interested about JFK. Last year I read this behemoth volume 1 biography of JFK, and it was amazing. It's like, this is the best time I've ever had reading a book, which is kind of crazy. But it's only volume 1, so this is all of this meat is all before he takes office. I think this book ends with JFK deciding that he wants to run for president, which is, so obviously this one doesn't get up to the assassination, and Frederick Logevelle, the biographer, has not released volume 2. Apparently it's supposed to be a 3-volume series. There's no word on when volume 2 is coming out, so I have no idea what I got to do. But obviously I'm very interested in JFK and Don DeLillo, so I think White Noise would be kind of perfect. And then also I want to read Underworld. I've heard people say that it's like the great American novel, and I don't know if it coined the term the shot heard around the world, or if it uses that term, or if I don't know. But basically I want to read Underworld, but I don't know what other kind of White Noise, what other kind of Don DeLillo books there are out there, because those are the only 2 I really know. And Underworld is a lot. Underworld is like 100 pages, and I'm not sure I want to read all that, because I've got a lot of long books that I'm trying to read already. But yeah, let's see. This is what I acquired. A lot of money spent, but I think money well spent, and I'm very grateful to have these books. Goodbye. Subscribe.